to go to lights.
We're in trouble.
Where's all the boosters? Fluvial dampers?
It is hard to believe that nearly half a century has passed since the first time I watched The Empire Strikes Back in a pitch-dark movie theatre in 1980. I still remember clearly squeezed together with friends in front of the shimmering Technicolor screen, my heart pounding, as Luke got lost in the Hoth snowstorm, the stench of the Tauntaun spreading through Han Solo's words, the fear of the damp Dagobah with the small Yoda, and the twist, "I am your father," that made the entire auditorium fall completely silent, then erupt. At that time, I cried because Luke was lonely, waited anxiously for Han to reply with indifference, and firmly believed the Empire could crush everything. The film made children like me live fully in that universe. But the older I became, re-watching it on an old black and white TV, the more I realised it was like a behind-the-scenes time capsule. Did you know that to achieve the terrifying Tauntaun effect on screen, the director defied objections and did something horrific that made the entire crew vomit? Or that the reason behind the scar left by the wampa on Luke's face was a secret that was only revealed 20 years later, and especially the truth behind Carrie Fisher's confession when she was caught using prohibited substances right in the middle of the hellish set, sending the entire crew into panic. Today, we will reopen the darkest and strangest backstage doors of The Empire Strikes Back. 20. Tauntaun, the most disgusting prop in Star Wars history. I still cannot forget the disgusting and slimy feeling every time the scene of Han Solo cutting open the Tauntaun appears on screen. Every rewatch still makes my stomach churn, and it can be said to be the most haunting scene throughout my childhood. It was not just a special effect, it was the real horror of the entire film crew. To create the steam rising from the hot body in the freezing snow of Hoth, they stuffed the prop's belly full of rotten meat-spoiled tuna and a special slime. The overwhelming stench spread across the freezing Norwegian set, causing the crew to vomit continuously. "Oh my God, this smell is horrifying." Mark Hamill cried out when he had to lie inside it for a test shot. "I can't take it anymore, I've thrown everything up," a logistics crew member whispered, clutching his stomach. Harrison Ford, even while trying to stay calm, had to turn his face away. This is even worse than the smell of jet fuel. After each take, they sprayed deodorizing chemicals, but it was useless. The smell lingered on. Finally, when filming was finished, Irvin Kershner ordered "Burn the carcass. Immediately. Don't let it haunt us any longer." That prop saved Luke in the film, but for the crew, it was an unforgettable nightmare of stench. But when looking back, the fake beast created an iconic moment, yet it was also the slimiest, most horrifying memory of The Empire Strikes Back. 19. Wampa was written to cover Mark Hamill's accident. Few people know that the scene of the Wampa slashing Luke on Hoth was not part of the original script idea, but was born from a real car accident suffered by Mark Hamill just a few months before filming. The serious accident noticeably changed his face, scars, a shifted jaw, and the crew had to find a way to hide it without making the audience suspicious. Hamill later recalled his voice still slightly trembling. "That accident almost destroyed my career." But it became an interesting detail in the film. Irvin Kershner laughed when deciding to add the Wampa monster. They quickly wrote the scene of Luke being clawed across the face, used heavy makeup to cover the real scars, and then shot close-ups of the wound in the ice cave. Scratch him, make it look truly terrifying. The director of photography shouted instructions while Hamill lay motionless under the fake snow. "It really hurts, but I have to endure it," he whispered between takes. The result was one of the most striking opening scenes of Part 2, turning a real-life accident into an indispensable part of the story. A real scar in real life saved the character of Luke Skywalker on screen and made The Empire Strikes Back feel more realistic and closer to older audiences who once worried about that young man in the theatre in 1980. 18. carbon freeze chamber, a studio hell that suffocated the actors. Few people would expect that the scene of Han Solo being frozen in carbonite, one of the most emotional moments of the series, was filmed under conditions that were almost torturous. At Elstree Studios in England, the thick carbonite smoke effects combined with high temperatures turned the soundstage into a stifling steam furnace, causing many crew members to faint midway through. I felt like I was slowly dying. The air was thick. Carrie Fisher recalled her voice still slightly choked. The smoke was so dense that my eyes burned and my lungs felt scorched. Harrison Ford complained as he had to stand motionless in that cloud of smoke. The scene "I Love You" I know was filmed right when the entire crew was completely exhausted. Fisher nearly collapsed from lack of oxygen, while Ford tried hard to suppress his coughing to keep the line. "Hang on, just one more take." Irvin Kershner encouraged them, even though he himself had to wipe sweat constantly. Those moments were not pure acting, they were real human endurance. Watching it again today, we suddenly find it strange the most iconic lines of The Empire Strikes Back were born from that physical pain itself, making older audiences like us still feel the heavy breathing, the tension mixed with anxiety when Leia spoke her words of love in the theatre in 1980. But those hardships were nothing compared to the true survival challenge on the icy planet Hoth, where snowstorms were not special effects, but harsh reality. 17. Hoth was not a special effect, it was a survival challenge. When witnessing the scene of Luke wandering in the snowstorm on Hoth, my friends and I were extremely impressed because it was so realistic, to the point that we once argued about whether it was actually shot outdoors or not. It turned out to be true. The crew flew to Finse, Norway, a remote mountainous area where snowstorms can last for weeks, to get real snow, real cold, without relying on special effects. A sudden storm hit, trapping the entire crew in a small hotel roads, blocked food supplies gradually running out. The scene of Luke staggering through the storm was shot right outside the back door. Mark Hamill had to endure cold, so severe that his eyelids froze shut. It was so cold that my eyelids stuck together. I couldn't open them. Hamill later recalled his voice still slightly trembling. We were trapped. No one could go outside. All we could do was keep filming to make use of it. A logistics staff member complained. Shoot it. Take advantage of this storm. Irvin Kershner ordered turning disaster into a golden opportunity. Those days not only created majestic icy imagery, but also tested everyone's limits of endurance. It was the real-life harshness that created the beauty of Hoth, reminding us of winter afternoons when we sat in front of the screen, hearts full of excitement and pride for the people who dared to face nature to bring us an immortal part of Star Wars. 16. Dagobah, a rotting swamp. Who could watch the scenes of Yoda training Luke in the Dagobah swamp without sensing the damp, rotting smell seeping through every frame? That was not a special effect. The set was built with real water, real plants, real mud, and after a few weeks, everything began to ferment and grow mold, creating a horrifyingly filthy ecosystem. The crew had to drain the water continuously and dry the floor overnight in order to keep filming. This smell is like a hellish swamp, no joke, Mark Hamill said, grimacing as he remembered. Watch out for the snakes. The crew warned when they used real snakes for the scenes of creatures crawling underwater, and one of them bit Hamill after many consecutive takes. A plan to place a crocodile on his body without warning was ultimately cancelled. Drop it, it's too dangerous, Irvin Kershner decided decisively. Those behind-the-scenes details highlight the silent sacrifices made to create the mysterious planet where Luke confronts his deepest fears. A set filled with stench and danger gave birth to the most sacred moments of the series, making older audiences like us still feel the damp, heavy breath of Dagobah every time we re-watch it, as if we ourselves once wandered into that swamp. 15. Behind-the-scenes staff reveal Carrie Fisher used cocaine while filming Empire. James, a logistics staff member, recalled, Sometimes we saw Carrie laughing in a very strange way, her eyes shining, then suddenly going silent, sitting alone in the corner of the dressing room. At that time, everyone could guess, but no one dared to say anything. Those were the long, dragging Dagobah shooting days with a dense schedule and pressure from all sides that exhausted the entire crew. On the Elstree Studios set, cocaine once existed as an unavoidable part of Hollywood culture in the 80s, something that helped some people stay awake during shooting sessions that lasted until late at night. Carrie Fisher sometimes disappeared for a few minutes into the dressing room, then came back with a strange energy, laughing more, talking faster, but then suddenly going silent again. The Cloud City scenes, or the I love you. I know moments were often shot when everyone was already worn out with red eyes and hoarse voices. That behind-the-scenes picture left a fairly clear, dark side behind the radiant, strong appearance of Princess Leia was a young girl who had to face enormous pressure, a harsh schedule and fatigue that accumulated heavier and heavier. Those moments make us realise that even a screen icon is only human with weaknesses and imperfect coping mechanisms in the creative storm of a legendary film. 14. Acting with a puppet. When re-watching the scenes of Luke talking with Yoda on Dagobah, it is hard to believe that Mark Hamill was almost acting alone. In front of him was only a small rubber puppet operated by Frank Oz and the crew from beneath the floor, with no actor opposite him, no real eyes to look into. Hamill had to convince himself that this was a 900-year-old Jedi full of wisdom. I had to believe this was a 900-year-old Jedi, otherwise the scene would feel fake. Hamill recalled his voice still slightly emotional. It was like performing alone in a closed room, but I felt power coming from that puppet. He smiled. Frank Oz, hidden beneath the floor with his hands on the controls, whispered, "Look into my eyes, Luke." Yoda's line echoed from beneath the wooden boards, creating a strange sensation. "You must believe in the Force, Luke." Oz continued, his voice soft, but full of authority. Those scenes required great imagination from Hamill, turning a puppet into an immortal symbol. Looking back today, we find it strange. A simple puppet manually operated created the most sacred moments of the series, making older audiences like us still feel Luke's isolation, fear and hope, as if we ourselves once sat in the Dagobah swamp, listening to the old master's words. 13. The final battle. Exhaustion at 3 a.m. Few people know that Luke's painful cry of no when witnessing Han Solo being frozen in carbonite was not a carefully rehearsed performance, but a real cry that burst out from absolute exhaustion. The final day of shooting the Cloud City battle dragged on until 3 a.m. with no background music, no energy left. The entire crew reduced to weary people worn down after hours of continuous work. We were completely drained. We had no strength left to act. Mark Hamill recalled his voice still slightly tired when telling the old story. "No impossible." The line came out naturally filled with genuine pain from the heart. "Keep it, don't reshoot another take." Irvin Kershner decided immediately because he knew that moment could not be recreated. The entire crew fell silent for a few seconds, hearing only Hamill's heavy breathing and the camera slowly stopping. Those hours turned exhaustion into the power of truthful storytelling, making the scene touch the hearts of the audience. 12. I know, an improvised line that made history. I have always been impressed by the scene of Han Solo being frozen in carbonite, the moment when Leia says "I love you" and receives the short reply "I know." It almost became legendary, one of the most immortal love responses in film history. When I was young, watching it in the theatre, I only thought it was cool, confident, perfectly Han Solo. But only when I grew up did I learn that it was completely improvised by Harrison Ford. He hated the original line in the script, a cheesy response like "I love you too." So right in front of the camera, he changed it himself to "I know." The original line sounded too fake, I couldn't say it. Ford later recalled his voice still carrying a bit of indifference. "I love you," Carrie Fisher replied, her eyes sparkling. "I know," Ford answered immediately with his signature half-smile. "Keep it perfect," Irvin Kershner shouted from the director's chair, not allowing another take for fear of losing that precious naturalness. The entire crew fell silent for a few seconds and then burst into applause. No one expected such a small change to touch the hearts of millions so deeply. Watching it again today, we suddenly feel a strange warmth. The most iconic line of the series did not come from a toggle writer, but from the sincerity of Harrison Ford himself, an improvised moment that turned love on screen into something close ordinary and everlasting. 11. Lightsabers were hand-drawn frame by frame. Have you ever wondered why the lightsaber glow in The Empire Strikes Back looks so shimmering and alive, so different from today's CGI? That is because the entire effect was drawn by hand, one frame at a time, with coloured pencils on high-contrast film. Tens of thousands of drawings were created by a team of artists under the direction of Brian Johnson, producing a light that felt more real than any digital effect. Draw every stroke, not a single mistake allowed. One effects artist recalled his hands still trembling when remembering that meticulous work. The light has to shimmer, it has to move like it has a soul. The visual supervisor demanded in every meeting, "Finish this frame, then move on to the next," colleagues urged as they sat for hours under desk lamps. There was no software, no computers, only human hands and patience. Every time the lightsabers clashed, the burst of light was the result of layers upon layers of overlapping strokes slowed down and then sped up to create a sense of life. The technique took months, but delivered a classic mystical beauty that modern CGI sometimes still cannot reach. The sword fights between Luke and Vader therefore became more realistic, making older audiences still feel the heat of the lightsaber every time they re-watch them. 10. Boba Fett's burn accident, a propane leak, set the suit on fire. One of the scariest behind-the-scenes accidents happened right at Elstree Studios while filming a Boba Fett scene. A propane leak from a gas tank caused the suit worn by actor Jeremy Bulloch to catch fire. The flames flared up quickly and were fortunately extinguished in time, but Bulloch still suffered minor burns. At the same time, the soundstage of The Shining caught fire, heavily spreading to the Empire filming area, forcing the crew to move to another stage and delaying the schedule for several weeks. Carrie Fisher collapsed due to severe flu combined with an allergy to paint materials. Hamill fell into depression due to isolation on the Dagobah set and the side effects of mineral oil used in makeup. "Fire's up, run!" the crew shouted in panic. "I can't breathe anymore," Fisher cried out as she collapsed. "I need rest, I can't take it," Hamill whispered to a colleague. To relieve stress, Frank Oz brought the character Miss Piggy to the set performing to make everyone laugh. "Laugh a bit, don't be so tense," Oz said. Those incidents nearly caused the crew to fall apart, but also created a strange bond. A behind-the-scenes world full of risks, fires and illness. All of it contributed to a film in which audiences could feel the authenticity born from the filmmaker's own sacrifices. 9. The Empire Strikes Back was once mistaken for a copy of Star Wars. When The Empire Strikes Back was released in 1980, quite a few audiences and critics initially thought it was merely a derivative sequel repeating the formula of Star Wars 1977, without real breakthroughs. They called it a bigger, more expensive copy with grand scale but lacking new creativity. It's exactly like the first one, just with a few more monsters and bigger ships. One critic wrote in an early review, "Bigger in scale, but what's new?" Audiences whispered as they left the theatre. George Lucas remained silent, did not argue, because he knew time would prove it. Many people left with an initial sense of disappointment, thinking the series had run out of ideas. But gradually, through repeated viewings, the depth of the film emerged, the twist, "I am your father," the character development, and the powerful emotional moments. Those negative comments quickly changed, turning Empire into the highest-rated entry of the trilogy. Today, looking back at that initial reaction, We find it interesting a film, once considered a copy, became a masterpiece, proving that sometimes patience and time are what create true value. 8. AT-AT sound came from industrial machines. Have you ever noticed that the heavy metallic footsteps of the AT-ATs on Hoth sound both powerful and strangely real? That was not stock audio or digital effects. It was created from entirely practical sources. Sound engineer Ben Burt recorded the sound of metal stamping machines in factories, then slowed it down, mixed it with the roars of elephants and bears, and added a bit of old truck engine noise. "Record this one, it sounds heavier," Burt directed in the studio, headphones pressed tight. "Slow it down more, add animal sounds," he requested while adjusting each audio layer. "Perfect for the AT-AT, it sounds real." Colleagues nodded when hearing the first mix. There was no complex software, only magnetic tape-cutting machines and patience. Each AT-AT step was a combination of dozens of sound layers, creating a massive, terrifying feeling, as if they were truly crushing the snow. The technique took weeks of experimentation, but delivered an iconic sound that still sends shivers down audiences' spines whenever they hear it again. The AT-AT advance scenes on Hoth therefore became vivid and imposing, making older audiences still feel the weight of the Empire in every echoing metallic step. 7. The opening crawl was real physics. I have always noticed that one of the most familiar images of Star Wars, the opening crawl slowly drifting across the starry background, was actually created entirely using physical methods, not digital effects. The text was printed large on a board several meters long, laid horizontally, and the camera slowly slid inch by inch along the board. Any mistake meant starting over. "Slide slowly, keep the speed steady," the cinematographer shouted in the dark room. "Wrong, it's out of focus, do it again," director Irvin Kershner said when checking a test take. "Keep it sharp, don't shake," the assistant reminded while adjusting the camera. That meticulous work required absolute precision. The camera moved mechanically with no software correction. Each crawl took hours to set up and shoot, but delivered a smooth, classic magical quality that later CGI effects struggled to recreate. The golden text gliding across the screen did not only introduce the story, but also created a grand feeling like an ancient book opening before the audience's eyes. On evenings in 1980 in the theatre, when the crawl began, the entire auditorium fell silent. That moment remains a symbol of handcrafted magic in filmmaking. 6. Boba Fett was once a white stormtrooper. Almost no one knows that originally, Boba Fett's design was quite different from the legendary image. We know his suit was pure white clean, like a regular stormtrooper, completely lacking the rugged, mysterious look. Too white, it doesn't look threatening at all. Designer Joe Johnston commented when seeing the first test version. "Dirty it up, add scratches," George Lucas ordered immediately. "More scratches add dirt, make it look worn." The crew agreed and got to work. They used paint sand and abrasive tools to create scuffs, burn marks, and layers of grime, transforming the armour from clean to something that looked like a weapon that had survived hundreds of battles. The result was a Boba Fett who looked dangerous, mysterious, full of character. A true bounty hunter. Those small changes turned the character from an anonymous stormtrooper into an immortal icon of the series. When he first appeared on screen, older audiences still remember the feeling of suspense a new character, but one who looked as if he had already lived through countless battles, instantly sparking curiosity at first sight. 5. Yoda was almost cut from the film. Did you know that Yoda, the legendary Jedi symbol, was once almost completely removed from The Empire Strikes Back because the studio worried that a rubber puppet would look fake and damage the film's credibility? At first, 20th Century Fox doubted that a tiny doll could convince audiences of a 900-year-old Jedi full of power. Cut it too risky, a studio representative once said in a tense meeting. "No, trust me, it will be the heart of the film," Frank Oz replied firmly, carrying the entire belief. He and the team had to prove it with the X-Wing lifting scene, a shot that required perfect coordination between the puppet Mark Hamill's acting and practical effects. "Lift it up, Yoda." The line echoed during the test shoot, and when the X-Wing actually rose out of the swamp, the whole room fell silent. "See, it works," Oz said, his voice full of pride. George Lucas supported it, and the decision to keep Yoda changed the entire series. Without Yoda, Dagobah would lose its sacred appeal, and Luke would have no great teacher. That behind-the-scenes story shows the crew's courage. They gambled on a simple puppet to create an immortal symbol, making older audiences still remember the sense of amazement when they first saw Yoda speak on screen in 1980. 4. Lucas financed the film himself. George Lucas was not only a director, he was also someone who dared to bet everything on The Empire Strikes Back. Rejecting all financial support from major studios, Lucas paid out of his own pocket, borrowed from banks, and mortgaged personal assets to produce the sequel. If the film flopped, he would lose everything: his house, his future, even control of the franchise. "I'll do it myself. No one interferes," Lucas declared in a meeting with the crew. "That's a huge risk, George," friends warned. "If it fails, I lose everything, but I believe in this story." He admitted, his voice calm but full of determination. Lucas founded Lucasfilm to retain creative control, rejecting all script changes from outside. That courage brought total freedom. No one forced scene cuts, no one interfered with the major twist. The result was a film deeper and darker than the first, something the studio initially feared. That behind-the-scenes story shows Lucas's spirit of risk-taking. He did not just make a film, he protected his vision with his own personal future. For older audiences, that is why The Empire Strikes Back remains the best installment, because it was made from the heart and real sacrifice. 3. The love triangle changed midway. When I first watched the film in the theatre in 1980, I thought Luke and Leia would be the perfect couple. The tender looks, the moments they were together, made me certain they would fall in love. It turns out that love triangle was once planned completely differently, and only a mid-course change created the real appeal of The Empire Strikes Back. Initially, the script intended Luke and Leia to be the main couple with Han Solo, only playing the third role, supportive and humorous. Luke and Leia will be the centre, screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan once wrote in an early draft. But as filming progressed, the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher exploded too strongly. The sharp exchanges, the fiery looks made the entire crew realise the mistake. Change its switch to Han Leia. George Lucas decided in an urgent script meeting. "Luke and Leia?" Kasdan asked, back surprised. "No, Han is the one who fits Leia," Lucas replied, realising that Ford and Fisher brought far more natural romantic tension. Traces of the old plan still remained in a few scenes: intimate hugs, vague lines about feelings between Luke and Leia, leaving audiences initially confused. That decision created deep inner conflict for Luke, enriched the relationships, and led to the major twist later. That behind-the-scenes story shows the crew's remarkable flexibility. They listened to real chemistry on set instead of rigidly sticking to the old script. 2. I Am Your Father, the greatest secret in cinema. Do you remember the scene when Darth Vader says, "No, I am your father," during his confrontation with Luke on Cloud City? That moment was not only a classic twist, but also the most tightly guarded secret in cinema history. Only 3 people knew the truth: George Lucas, Irvin Kershner, and Mark Hamill. Even James Earl Jones, the voice of Vader, was not informed until the film was completed. David Prowse, the actor in the Vader suit, was given a fake line. "No, Obi-Wan killed your father to prevent leaks." "Read the fake line, don't say the real one," Kershner instructed Prowse before the camera. "Obi-Wan killed your father," Prowse read according to the script, his voice deep but unwitting. Later in post-production, Jones recorded the real line. "No, I am your father." Prowse once accidentally spoiled it at a fan convention, but no one believed him because the fake line had circulated. "I am your father," Prowse recalled, but the audience laughed. Must be a joke. The secret was kept until the final moment. No leaks, no spoilers. When the film premiered, the entire theatre fell silent, then erupted with emotion. 1. The sequel almost became a completely different low-budget film. Perhaps you do not know that if Star Wars 1977 had flopped, The Empire Strikes Back would not exist as we know it. It would only have been a low-budget sequel with little money, completely different. George Lucas once prepared a backup plan, Luke and Leia crash landing on the planet Mimban, a dark world where they had to avoid the Empire invader while discovering new powers. The idea was inspired by the novel Splinter of the Mind's Eye 1978, introducing kyber crystals, the origin of the lightsaber, and a compact adventure with fewer effects. Keep it small if the first part fails. Lucas once thought while writing the initial draft. Crash landing on Mimban. Screenwriter Alan Dean Foster suggested. Avoid Vader, focus on a new planet. The original idea. Fortunately, the massive success of the first film allowed Lucas to expand his vision from low budget to a dark, deep blockbuster, with Hoth, Dagobah, Cloud City, and the father-son twist. That backup plan was shelved, but traces remain in the novel and some concept art. That is why The Empire Strikes Back remains the best instalment, because it was made from belief, not from a safe plan. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you won't miss our next videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.